So today we're going to talk about creating the best club climate. The club's climate is the deciding factor in whether or not guests are going to go on and become members and whether those members continue to participate and remain active. So there are a couple of things that right off the bat are going to contribute to a successful club environment. Oh, come on. There we go. So first off, is it a good learning environment? Is it a clean room? Is it arranged so that people can all see the speaker? Is it, the room temperature. Yeah, I visited a club one time that was meeting in some sort of basement in the middle of August, and I was the guest speaker that night. I ended up just sweating like the proverbial pig. Absolutely dripping at the front of the room. Everyone else was a little bit peaked, but I was just embarrassingly dripping on people as I tried to give my speech. So that kind of thing really has an impact on whether people come back. There's one particular club that has been struggling at least as long as I've been in Toastmasters. That club has a really oddly shaped meeting room where the speaker essentially has a corner of the room to their back. When someone else comes up to take the stage, there's no room for them to get in, so they always bump into each other. And then the table is kind of oddly shaped. And so a room like that, it's like a fishbowl, as they say. A goldfish only grows big enough for the bowl and then it stops. And a club very often only grows as big as the room will accommodate comfortably. Yeah.
That's something I noticed about the lunch bunch. We're getting close to filling up the room.
And that's a great problem to have, except it's still a problem.
Yeah.
So how many members are there now?
As paid to date, there's 15.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, we kind of had a bloom. I'm not just organically, just, I don't know where the people came from or where they heard about it, but just within a couple months, we had a lot of new members.
That's great. And are you getting them up and running in Pathways quickly, getting their icebreaker speeches out of the way?
Ish, kind of. I just started being the VPE, and I gave my speech last week about the Pathways, and I got some feedback that people didn't know, and they were grateful that now they know how to do it. And then this week, or I'm now preparing to really dive in and see what each person needs so that I can make personal contact and say, how can I get you there?
Yeah, that's great. Ideally, your new members, as they come in, the first meeting, they all do a table topic. Second meeting, they do a functionary role like a timer or the counter. The third meeting is their icebreaker. You don't want them to wait 3 months, 6 months before they get started, because it gets really big in their head and becomes rather daunting. But if they jump in right away, they realize it's not that big a deal. And they're more likely to then advance quickly in the program, or at least at their own pace, rather than putting it off. I've too often seen members quit before they ever give their icebreaker, and that's just a heartbreaker for me.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the advice.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that keeps people coming, of course, is the interaction between your members. So you want to be sure that everyone is giving each other encouragement, good feedback, and support, and leaving room for everyone to grow and explore their own leadership and communication skills. It's that unique dynamic of a Toastmasters club that influences the performance and the growth of all of its members.
So, Dennis, my first experience with Toastmasters was the regiment. I came in, I sat down, sat in silence. Some people said hello, but then we dove into the rule or the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
and then the meeting's adjourned, and then it's like we all get up and leave. So when do those relationships get built? And I don't know if my group was just shy and didn't want to really say hello and chat me up a lot. And I notice that now, like people who work together will kind of discuss things, but there's not really this. And to me, my first impression with Toastmasters was that we weren't to do that. It's like you stick to the schedule, the meeting's adjourned, and then you leave. We're on a very tight schedule. This is all about punctuality. Does that, so my question is like, when do you make those relationships and build them?
The best time to introduce yourself to a guest, of course, is before the meeting. So, and we'll mention that one of the things you want to do is be sure you arrive prepared at least 5 minutes prior. One of my home clubs, well, let's see. One of my home clubs has got a just dynamite sergeant at arms, and she's there very early. She puts out tablecloths and little tchotchkes for people to play with when they arrive. She is just great at greeting the people as they come in, making sure they feel welcome. And then, of course, if there's more than one guest, she turns them over to one of the other officers so that they can take over with the greeting.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Now, my larger home club with 35 members, they have a official greeter role. That person is there with the guest book and the sign-in sheet, and that their whole purpose there, raison d'etre, is to make sure that absolutely everybody coming in the door gets a friendly greeting, not just guests, but all of our members. And they say something personal about all the members to make sure that they feel that they're welcome and that we're glad to see them every week.
And that is a different role than Sergeant of Arms. That's another role that just someone takes on?
Yeah, we assign it every week, just like the yacht counter and evaluators. We have the official greeter. And if this is sort of an issue in your club, then that would be something to consider. Otherwise, if your sergeant at arms is doing a great job greeting people as they come in, that's terrific. We got that feedback at my large club, the one that's got the official greeter, that a guest was put off by the regimentation of the meeting. And we took that note because while we should keep a tight schedule and respect people's time and be sure that we do all of the things that you expect to see in a good Toastmasters meeting, it should be something that is so seamless and smooth that the regimentation doesn't get in the way of the experience of the meeting. And we say it over and over again, if it's not fun, it's not Toastmasters.
Mm.
So it's great to be on time and it's great to be professional, but it's also important that everybody have fun and relax. Toastmasters is a place to get away from the pressures of work. It's not an additional chore that you want to make difficult for people or make them feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be just a note to take to your club and see if they can do something. First off, to be sure that everyone understands their roles in a way that doesn't have to take time out of the meeting for them to discuss it. And then encourage everyone to work on it and think about making it seem so seamless that it isn't distracting for new visitors.
Becky, I was at your club and noticed that myself. And you might want to have somebody put on your agenda just a line to welcome guests somewhere early in the meeting.
Okay.
It wasn't unfriendly. I felt welcome there, but there was no mention made that I was a visitor at your club. I'll trade that problem for the one I have if you're willing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And yeah, the group it doesn't feel unfriendly, but it left me confused, being like, wait, is this kind of like walking into court? Like you need to be serious now? Or, Yeah, so thank you. That's a good idea. And thanks for your feedback, Elliot.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, one thing that all of my clubs do at the beginning of the meeting, if we have guests, we ask them to stand up, introduce themselves, and tell us how they heard about our club or why they decided they wanted to attend today. So,
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I'll bring it up to the officers and see, just because it's nice to be acknowledged as a guest, you know?
yeah. And then at the end of the meeting, we ask them what they thought of the meeting. So they get 2 chances to speak every time without having a lot of pressure.
That's nice.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so in order to make guests feel welcome and to make the regular members feel like they're appreciated, you can set a good example. This is something that I think I've drilled this into Elliot already too many times, but you can't force other members to be great Toastmasters members. What you can do is show up to the meeting and be that role model where everybody says, wow, I want to be more like Becky. If I were prepared the way she is, if I was as cheerful as she was and friendly every time, then I would be a better Toastmaster. So you can't tell them that. You can just show them. So you arrive at least 5 minutes before the meeting. If you happen to be the Toastmaster or you have a more substantial role, you want to get there even earlier if you can.
Okay.
Yeah. And then since you're there 5 minutes early, you can help the sergeant at arms set up, get the chairs in line, make sure that the room is comfortable. Poor sergeant at arms, if they do their job absolutely terrifically, nobody notices, but if they miss one little thing, everybody, oh, where's the sergeant at arms? Why is everything awful? Yeah. So we take pity on them. We help them. So set up before the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, help gather the papers and put things away. Make it a team effort, and it's a good time to chat. You also want to volunteer, and that means, yes, be an officer. At this point, I'm obviously preaching to the choir. Becky, I imagine you're eventually going to be the district governor, or district director, pardon me. Because you've got that great attitude, and you'll be following Elliot moving in. I think it'd be great if we did have district leadership come out of Division G. That would definitely shake things up and give us a brand new perspective. But
yeah, and we can use the Toastmaster airplane to get down where you are.
That's right. Or you can make everybody come to you, or we can take advantage of this Zoom tool. I think that this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, this is nice.
Something we never had this before. I think it's great. When they say many hands make light work, and that is absolutely true of the executive committee for your club. It's not just that you want to get other people to do stuff so that you don't have to do stuff. You're actually sharing the leadership growth experience by allowing them to be leaders and allowing them to take some responsibility. And of course, you want to be supportive. So during the meeting, you're going to listen attentively, enthusiastically applaud for everything everybody does. And I was reading, I want to say it's Everything I Wanted to Know was in kindergarten, but actually it was a different book. The point that he made, though, was if anybody ever starts clapping, everyone has to join in 3 seconds. So you never get this kind of 80s slow clap going. If anybody starts to clap, everybody jumps in and claps for at least 3 seconds. You don't have to go on forever. One of the things that my clubs were not good about is clapping until someone goes up and shakes hands at the podium. And so for a week or so, I was the only one doing that, clapping until we actually transfer control of the meeting. And of course, once they realized why I was doing it, it made sense to them and they all kind of went along with it. So once again, you can be that person that gets that sort of thing going. You also want to be sure that you congratulate everybody who participated in the meeting, particularly guests, especially if they're brave enough to do a table topic or something along that line. Any way they contribute, just by their introduction, you can make them feel like they're already a member if you treat them that way and give them that kind of support. So those first impressions do count, and you want to greet those guests as they come in just as warmly as you possibly can. When you greet them at the door, you can ask them, how did you hear about the club and why did you decide to visit? Even if you don't ask that during the meeting, and it's perfectly okay to ask them twice. You want to have a real conversation with them if you can, and chat with them about what Toastmasters is all about, what they can expect during the meeting. I always make a point of telling people that we clap like maniacs, because that can be a little scary for people, how often we do it. It's almost like genuflecting in church. You have to know when to do it and how long to do it. So I just warn them that it's going to happen a lot. I also talk about the fact that we shake hands at the podium to transfer control of the meeting, so that they understand if they go up and give a table topic, they're going to need to shake hands. They shouldn't worry about germs. We all have the same things. How's that go? Yeah, so be ready to answer questions as you're talking with people. If you don't know the answer, of course, you don't want to make something up, but that's a great time. If they're asking questions about membership, guide them over to the Vice President of Membership. If they're asking questions about the meeting room or what have you, guide them over to the Sergeant at Arms. But be willing to discuss the questions and be willing to learn the answers, of course, so that you can answer them the next time. You also want to make an active effort to be friendly, become a friend with this person, treat them like a friend. It's great when they're in the meeting and you can be the person that's kind of whispering all the secrets and the inside information. You start to make them feel like they're already an insider, already a member during that first meeting by making sure they understand everything that's going on. It also counts toward the Competent Leadership Award if you befriend a new member during the meeting. So if you're still using the CL manual this year, that's a good way to get some credit. After the meeting, you always ask them 3 questions. What did you think of the meeting? Do you have any questions about Toastmasters? Are you planning to come back? And what's the most important question you ask every single guest at the end of the meeting?
How did you hear about it?
Nope. It seems like the most awkward question. It seems like the most pushy question, but it's the reason that people don't join our club is nobody ever says,
Are you going to be a member?
would you like to join our club today?
Huh.
And you'd think, well, duh, that's obvious. We're going to ask them if they want to join, but people are afraid that they're being pushy or that they're overselling, and we just don't get to that question. And a lot of times you'll talk to people and they didn't join until their second or third meeting, and they say, well, you know, I wanted to join the first week. I didn't know how. Nobody offered. So very often the answer I get is, yes, I'm thinking of joining your club. I'll bring a check next week. Even if they don't join on the spot, you can give them the application. You can point out the costs and explain how those work, and then they'll come back the next week and have a check. It works remarkably well. And if you're not doing this in your clubs that have low membership, really got to try that right away.
Yeah, that's actually basic salesmanship.
Yeah. Because the fact is, when people come and they enjoy the meeting and they realize it's not very expensive, they want to join. And of course they do. Now, once they join, you have to show them that you're glad that they're members and you want to keep them. So one of the ways that you can do that is have a good, strong mentorship program. And a lot of people think that a mentor is somebody, some advanced or knowledgeable person who works with a newbie and takes them under their wing and shows them everything. But in practice, the way the mentorship program works, a very experienced member very often isn't engaged in the educational program the way they should be. They got their ACS a couple of years ago, and yeah, they're thinking they'll go for the ACG sometime, but I don't know, I'm awful busy. And so you team them up with a newbie coming in. Well, that means they have to go back and they have to look at the manuals again, and they have to coach that person. And very often you take that old Toastmaster and get them re-engaged in the educational program. So yes, it's beneficial to new people coming in, but it's also a great way for your club to keep the longtime members engaged in the program and engaged with all the new members to come in. Keeps it from feeling too cliquish as well. There we go. Yeah, amazing. Yes, you have to show interest in what other people do. So when they're, that means paying attention to how well they're progressing in the educational program. Be aware of what their goals are, whether they're trying to improve their salesmanship, whether they're trying to improve their ability to speak to small groups. Maybe they're having issues talking with their teenagers. So if you understand what their goals are, why they came to Toastmasters, you can support those goals on a weekly basis. And it doesn't take but a sentence or two, a pat on the back, and you can keep them engaged. They want to keep coming back because Elliot has great advice about how I can feed my cat. And I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Actually, I'm giving a speech on cats tomorrow.
How did I know that, Elliot?
Yeah, you're really intuitive, aren't you?
Yes, we'll put it down to that, yes. I don't actually have people following you the way you think I do. And you do want to be courteous and caring toward your longtime members as well. A lot of times, people like me, we get kind of grumpy. And yeah, I show up week after week. Yes, I do my roles week after week. But if you can show those people a little love and be sure you're not taking them for granted, that helps to keep them a little bit longer. You want to be considerate, and in this case, what they're talking about is if you know that you have an assigned role but you can't make the meeting, be sure that you let the Vice President of Education know well in advance. If you've been assigned a role, be sure you understand how to perform the role, and if you don't, get some information prior to the meeting. Talk to the Vice President of Education or the President and find out exactly how you fill that role, particularly if you're visiting a club in a new club where, and this happens to me all the time. I've been in clubs for years and they do things one way, go to a new club, and you might see the general evaluator run the second half of the meeting, right? Some clubs, it's the Toastmaster the whole time. Other times, the general evaluator has to step up. Well, if I'm the general evaluator, that's a really good thing to know before I actually go into the meeting that day. And you want to, oh yes, also let your Vice President of Education, that's you, Becky, know if you're ready to give a speech in case someone doesn't show up. As I've said, one of the ways I move quickly through the program is being sure that I've always got a speech in the chamber. I'm ready to get up and speak for manual credit at any meeting at any given moment.
Okay.
You can also, of course, make sure that everybody knows you're available to fill any role if you don't have one available. And
Okay.
the Vice President of Education should reward members who are always willing to step up and fill roles for other people by giving those people the roles that they want on a regular basis as well. One of the problems I ran into in one of my clubs today, we have one particular member who's been in the club for 2 years, hasn't really embraced the educational program. He signed up to give a speech today. He wanted to do a 3 to 5 minute speech on why I became a Toastmaster. Okay. It was a very poor speech. It wasn't written down. He hadn't rehearsed it. It was something he was doing off the top of his head. And I actually, in his evaluation today, took the club to task for allowing him to be in the club for 2 years and not give him the kind of feedback that would encourage him to work from the learning materials so that we would have something to evaluate him on so that he could make incremental progress. All that's been happening for 2 years is people keep saying, oh, we know you're timid. It's so brave of you to get up there. It's so wonderful that you gave a speech. Congratulations. And that's been the extent of his evaluation. Well, if you do a whitewash evaluation like that week after week, it makes somebody confident. It makes them feel that they can get up and speak anywhere. And when they do, they're just awful because they haven't actually worked on any of the skills that the Toastmasters program teaches. So I have a very strict rule, certainly in the clubs where I have the ability, and that is there are no free speeches. Any speech has got to be something from one of the legacy manuals. It has to be from Pathways, but you're not going to get up there and do a pocket speech without an evaluation guide that goes with it. That's not just so that the speaker has the ability to grow. The evaluator needs some criteria on which to judge how well the speaker has done. The club needs to hear what the purpose of the speech was and what the requirements are, what the goals are in this learning experience in order for them to evaluate how well the speaker did and how well the evaluator did in giving a review of their speech. So these learning materials are not just for the individual, they're for the entire club every single time. It is the core of Toastmasters. You're going to learn a little bit by getting up and giving speeches, a little bit by doing table topics. But our program is built around lessons that have real-time evaluations. And we want to be sure that everyone gets the most they can out of the Toastmasters program. Not only the speaking exercises, but also the leadership exercises that come with it. And the Pathways program intertwines the two in a way that hasn't been done in the past. So excellent evaluations, it's one of the ways we show that we care. It's the heart of Toastmasters.
So I want to be clear on this because I was under the impression that all evaluations were kind of done the same. But I noticed in my level 1 Pathways that the project came with an evaluation, which I printed out. And I was like, oh, good, I found an evaluation form. But now I'm on level 2 and it has an evaluation form. So does each speech have a different evaluation based on whether it's a research speech, research and presentation, or an icebreaker? On the Toastmaster website, I put in the search engine evaluation thinking there's just a general evaluation form, and I don't find anything.
Okay, as you're going through a Pathways lesson, as you're clicking through and you're looking at the video, you watch the video and do the whole thing, right, Becky? Of course you do.
Of course I do. Yes, I'm a nerd. I do everything right. I'm very obedient.
Usually about the second or third slide in, it has a link for all the resources for the particular lesson.
Uh-huh.
And so it's things that you can print out that go along with it. And one of the things that you can print out is the evaluation form for that particular speech, that particular lesson. And a lot of the evaluation forms early on in Pathways are very similar, and the criteria are similar, but the description of the purpose of the speech is different.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I think that you're going to, and actually I don't have firsthand experience of this yet. And now I have the ability to go look, so maybe I should. As you get into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels, it is my belief that the evaluation forms do become much more specific, and the criteria for evaluating the speech become more specific to the goals of that particular lesson.
Okay, so it would be the speaker's responsibility to print that evaluation out and bring it to give to their evaluator.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's yes, it's really good to know, and it's funny because that much I figured out amazingly. So I did bring my evaluation the first time I did a speech, but when I was done, I asked the vice president of education, oh, will you go into the system and enter this? And they looked at me like I was from Mars because, of course, I had no idea what we were supposed to do with the evaluation forms. Really, all that we do is hang on to them so that if it should happen that the vice president of education says, wow, I don't remember you giving this speech, you can say, well, I can prove it. Here's my evaluation form. Or in my case, I do a lot of speeches at different clubs, and I'll go back to my, because my Pathways stuff has to go through one home club, I will go back to that vice president of education, show the evaluation form, just so that she's cool with the fact I've completed that particular speech. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a convenient way to send the evaluation to your evaluator before the meeting, if you know who that is? I've always wanted to do this, but it's never been, other things get in the way and routines happen, and we weren't able to accomplish that, but I'd really like to see that happen.
Well, yeah, you definitely can do that because the evaluation forms for every lesson are available to all members. And maybe not even just the members, they're freely available. What you can do is send an email with a link to that file, link to that evaluation form, and then they can look at it on their own, even print it out if they want to.
And is that on the web page that you're talking about?
Yeah, you'd be able to get that through the Pathways Basecamp.
Okay.
Yep. Good questions. You see, now all these people are going to watch this video, and they have exactly the same questions you two have. There we go. All right. Really important to recognize achievements. One of the nice things about Toastmasters, of course, is that we get immediate feedback on the things that we're doing. We get an evaluation of the speech that very same day. It's very different than it is on the job, where you might get a 6-month evaluation or a yearly evaluation. And if it happens that you've got an area for growth, it can be really painful. After a year, the boss says, gee, that thing you've been doing every week, we hate that, stop it, something along that line. So the immediate feedback is great. And of course, when people are actually earning their educational awards, completing the lessons and pathways, getting through the levels is what I'm really talking about. Make a big deal out of it. In my 35-member club, every time somebody completes a level, they run around the table, get a high five from everybody there. We are now passing out the Pathways pins, and if you've seen them, they're larger than the old Toastmasters pins, which were huge compared to the tiny pins that I had when I first joined. But these larger pins have a little flag that hangs underneath for the level. So you don't have to replace the entire pin when they go to level 2. You can just replace the flag and have a little ceremony for that. And then they turn in the level 1 flag, and you can use that for somebody else. And you just trade the flags back and forth until they get to level 5, and that one they get to keep.
I like it.
Yeah. Let's see. Right. And lastly, you want to foster camaraderie. So everybody should feel welcome. You want to have group hug activities, of course. At the San Jose Club, we have a birthday dinner. So everybody who has a birthday in that month is celebrated at the same time at one dinner. We occasionally have things like hikes. We this year bought a Christmas tree at Christmas in the Park, San Jose, where I happened to play a role. You might guess, yes. But yeah, so we're going to have a decorating committee, build the decorations, then we're going to go out and decorate the tree, and we're going to go out and visit and sing carols around the tree, and then we have to go and take the decorations off the tree. So it's lots of activity around that thing. Cost $100, and that's a pretty good investment for 4 activities that bring people together for a lot of fun. So you can do any kind of thing like that. get people to socialize outside of the daily club meeting. As you say, Becky, it sounds like you're so regimented you don't get that opportunity to meet. And maybe you can just have a margarita hour, everybody pay their own way and just meet at a place and everybody have a cocktail together.
Yeah, we met as officers last week or the week before, one of the two. And it was, everybody's just kind of deer in the headlights, but we made some headway. And that was brought up by one of the officers is, maybe we could do something outside. So it's there. I'm being patient with the fact that we're all kind of new to Toastmasters and also taking on these roles. So I don't want to push them too much. But I think that could work. And as officers, I believe we'll get together, hopefully at least once a month until we kind of get our rhythm and cohesion going on.
Well,
but I do have a question. Our group, I believe, has new officers every 6 months.
Yes.
That's quick. Is there any way is that how it is with all Toastmasters? Like everything changes every 6 months?
No, you have a choice in your club bylaws. So when your club was first founded, someone made the decision that you would have the officers change every 6 months. You can change your bylaws to have them change once a year. Also, you can have any officer can be re-elected for a second term. And the only one that can't be elected to a third term is the president. The president has to change after 2 cycles. So whether it's a yearly role or a 6-month role, they can only do it twice in a row.
And then all the others, they can do it only 3 times?
They can do it as many times as they like.
Okay.
Only the president role has to be replaced after 2 cycles. Now, is it a good idea to have the same people in the same roles year after year? No. And not only does that take away the opportunity for other people to learn by taking that leadership role, it has a tendency to make the club become stagnant. And so you don't want the same vice president of education term after term after term. It's a lot of work, isn't it, Becky?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
yeah.
You deserve a break. The easiest role is president. Of course, we all know that because all they do is delegate everything to everybody else. But the best thing to do is start looking around for someone you think would be a great vice president of education and involve them in some of the decisions that you're making. So you can ask them to be your assistant and have them take on certain roles. Maybe they help plan out an education path for a new member coming in and get them used to the idea that they could do a great job as vice president of education, but you have to start them now, not yet wait until December and say, oh, who wants to be vice president of education? Because you know what happens if you do that? You get the 2 terms.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm fine with doing it twice just to get this club up and running. But I do see, maybe that's why they went stagnant, is because the group when I first started in November was 3 people were showing up consistently. We were tiny. Mm-hmm. And then I left because I was like, this is not going nowhere. And then I came back, and then there was this bloom. So now I'm like, all right, now we got some momentum. Let's keep it going.
Yes, and you've got a lot of power on that as the vice president of education. Not only do you have the ability to keep the momentum going for the members as they come in, but you also have complete control over the structure of the meeting. So if you want to have a meeting and it's all table topics, you could do that. You could have a meeting where you debate some political issue that's hot in the news or something. You want to have a meeting that's all about climate change and have 4 speeches about climate change with 4 evaluations. You could do that. Some clubs like to have a backwards meeting where you begin with the evaluations and then the people give the speeches. So if you said, well, I loved it when you coughed in the middle of that speech and then you had to recover, things like that. Yeah, all kinds of crazy things that you can do because you want it to be fun. You want it to be interesting. You want people to come back week after week and say, gee, what's Becky thought of this time? So maybe 3 meetings a month are strictly by the book, 2 speeches, table topics, evaluations. But 1 meeting per month, try something new. Ask your members what they think would be fun and try things out. Keep
That's
it.
a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So be sure that you and your fellow club members have the opportunity to evaluate your club's climate from time to time. When you enjoy each other's similarities, respect each other's differences, and work together as a team, your club will continue to thrive. There we go.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your work on that. It's been fun to talk with both of you, and I look forward to seeing you again. You're going to be doing this every week, right, Dennis?
Every week. Every
For
week.
how long?
I'm going to do at least 8. I'm trying to see where I stop share. There we go. I'm going to do at least 8 of these, and I've talked with my HPL committee. That's going to be my high performance leadership project completed. That way I can get my second DTM. Very excited about that. But as long as I've got people showing up and we want to talk, I'll keep these going all year.
Very cool.
So,
Great.
yeah, and what I hope is that after I finish with my tenure, that the next person who comes in takes this over. I think we're going to see a lot more of these meetings. In talking with the trio, and they've seen how this has worked, and they just had the district business meeting that worked out really well just on Monday. So I think this is a great opportunity. We can finally reach people that we weren't able to reach before.
Yeah, this Zoom is a great tool.
So Elliot, I told you when I saw you at the meeting that I had listened to the Power Hour and you discussing your low numbers, and I mentioned that at the officers meeting last week, and we all agreed we'd love to be helpful in whatever ways, and there were some ideas that were thrown around. I'm sure Nora will speak to you about them tomorrow. And
yeah, well, one thing I got from the first of these meetings that we're in now was that it can be problematic to have meetings every other week, which is what my club and your club and the Humboldt Club do. And for people that are interested, it might be a challenge. I think I got this from you, Dennis, that people from different clubs could show up. In other words, people from my club could go to your club, take on roles, I'll be the timekeeper and what have you, give speeches, and do that in reverse and make it a program to get everybody through the first level of pathways so that it doesn't take on the flavor of being necessarily permanent.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, I like that idea, and I'm gonna talk with Nora and Dennis tomorrow about that. Do you know the president of Arcata is another Dennis?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you Dennises are taking over.
All the best people are Dennis. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
yeah.
Well, anyway, Becky, I was surprised to hear that your club, as recently as when? You had 3 members, how long ago? Last December?
Well, in November, I mean, people showing up, I don't know what members maybe were members and just not coming to the meetings, but it was November of last year that I came, and it was 3 people, 3, 2. One time it was just Michael and I, and then things bloomed. And just to go a little bit more on club attendance, I want to encourage my group to get to their level 2, because you have to be level 2 to compete in a speech contest in February. Is that right, Dennis? You have to at least have level 2, be working on level 2 of a pathway to qualify to compete in
I,
the club contest.
yeah, I believe that's correct. It used to be 6 speeches, and that sounds like it would be about the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to encourage our group to do that, and maybe even say, to be able to do that, we might send some people to your group to give speeches. You know, if we have 15 people and they all need to give 6 speeches, I don't know that that'd be possible with our schedule to have that complete by February. So that's something I would talk to Nora about and say, how about we send some people to your group to give speeches? That way we can get more members to give more speeches quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How many of that group that you have now seem interested in moving quickly?
Well, until my speech last week, I don't think anybody was really doing anything. They were giving speeches, but not towards the pathway. They weren't working the pathway system, which means they'll need to backtrack, go in and re-enter. And I don't know how dedicated they are, really. I mean, I haven't really, before the VPE position, I didn't even understand pathways. I had tried it and hit a lot of roadblocks. So I think our group has been showing up, the Lunch Bunch has been showing up, but they didn't really know where it was going. So I'm hoping this next week that people will have more questions, and more so I'm going to go to each individual and say, what are your questions? Like,
They were waiting for your leadership.
That's right.
I'm having the same issue in my club, but it's compounded in mine by the low numbers. Trying to get something done when 2 people show up it's frustrating, but I do keep that to myself.
Well,
yeah.
if you've got 2 people, one of them gives a speech, and the other one gives an evaluation. And I am not the kind of person who says, "Hey, let's game the system," but let's game the system here. If you, ideally, you know that you're going to give a speech. Okay. So we want people to uh, prepare at least a day in advance. Well, okay. The honest truth, it's easy for me to write a 5 to 7 minute speech. It's just 1 page. I sit down, I knock it out, practice it, but I don't worry about having it perfectly polished at that point. There is no qualitative evaluation in Toastmasters that says you did your speech well enough to pass that lesson. It's a self-education program, so we should always be working to give the best possible speech we can, because that's what's going to help us to develop the speaking skills we need. But we shouldn't use that as a barrier to actually filling up a speaking slot. So it's perfectly okay to write a speech the day before, practice it a couple of times, come in, maybe give the speech with notes. Don't have it memorized this time. Get an evaluation. The evaluator should have said, "Boy, that would have been better if you had it memorized." But we're really glad that you came in and you used that slot, because now we're all advancing and we all learned from that experience. So yeah, you got 2 people in a room, you got 1 speaker, you got an evaluator, and you're moving forward in pathways. And a small group has the ability to move much more quickly because you have more speaking opportunities.
I've done what you suggested, and it also works well to have a PowerPoint. And then your visuals become your outline, and it's like, I really enjoy just picking a work of art and then sit there and meditate on it and put a few slides of that work of art and describe what it means and what you got from it. And it seems to be very effective. I think we respond to visuals.
Sure.
I want people to use fewer notes, but I don't say that. People do what they need to do.
You know, one thing, Elliot, that the officers, it was Nora, Kelly, Nick, and I who ended up showing up. And in one of my journeys through the website, I found a lot of marketing materials. Like, you can actually go somewhere on the website. I can't tell you exactly where, but there's flyers for Toastmasters that you can print off and use it as marketing tools. And Kelly and Nora both work at HSU. And for instance, I'm a consultant, so sometimes I'm working in Arcata, but we were thinking, if we got some of those marketing materials when I'm wandering, or, when I'm in Arcata and I see people who I think would be a good Toastmaster, I could just give them a flyer and say, hey, you should come check out this group, and give them your time and your date. But we were talking about, let's say on the weeks that I'm going to do that, I'm going to make sure to show up to your group. So if those people who I give the flyers to show up to your group and I'm not there, it may seem a little bit awkward. So making it, maybe Kelly goes to your group one week, I go to your group the next week, but the week prior to, when we're out just scouting around, because it's much easier for me to see some young professionals and say, hey, you don't know me, but you look like you might enjoy Toastmasters. So come as a guest, it'll be free. Come see what it's about, and, hand out 10 flyers. And then maybe that week they come, they see me. I'm like, hey, you came. Awesome. And then.
So you keep a supply of these in your back pocket, do you?
Well, you can print them off the internet. It's just, you go onto the Toastmasters website to their promotionals and their flyers that you would just print out. It would be nice if you printed them out from your budget so that we weren't using our own money to print them, because they're color flyers. And of course you would want to put on them whatever you want. It was just food for thought, just something that we were kicking around in the sense of ways to support you, to build your numbers in Arcata.
Was that one of the things that helped build your club?
No, I don't know. I think ours, came from a bloom. I don't know. I think, the one guy, his company sent him through it. And then there's another group that their company sent them through it. So we have 3 members from one company, 1 member from another company, and then the other 2 are from HSU, Nora and Kelly. And that was a longtime member. They work in his office, so he brought them. I think it was just an organic bloom that happened.
Huh. I want one of those.
Yeah. Well, we'll help you best we can.
Excellent.
We're all still new and bumbling around, but we do want to support you.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that, and right back at you.
Yeah.
One of the things you can do instead of flyers, Ashley Harkness used to make cards, business cards. And on one side, it was, the Toastmasters Club and the meeting date and everything. The other side said free pass. So you get your first Toastmasters meeting is free, and you hand these out. So Becky, that would get around some of the awkwardness that you're talking about, because it's not your personal invitation, but actually this free card that is given out by Arcata Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And you can just tell them, hey, Becky sent you.
Yeah. Yeah. I see you as a future leader. Come sharpen your skills. Who knows, make it easy. Arcata's full of young, and not just young people, but, I go to a restaurant or whoever's behind the counter, and if they're well-versed or have some kind of an air about them that I think, hey, I see that in you. And if you want to build on it, I think you'd enjoy this group. Come check it out.
That is a really effective way to get people engaged with the program. We had a guest come in. It's the same one who said that our meeting seemed a little too regimented. But talking with him the following week, I said to him, Doug, I think that Toastmasters is a great program for you, but I have to say, selfishly, I think that you would bring a lot to this club, that you have a lot to offer to us, and we would really gain from having you as a member. And that was part of what really sold him on joining Toastmasters, was his ability to make a difference in the organization as he came in. So yeah, if you see a spark in somebody, you can say, hey, we need people like you to make our meetings more interesting. I think you've got an interesting dynamic. You're going to bring a great point of view. And that can be a selling point.
Yeah.
And it's personal.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes, it has to be sincere.
Well, it was great chatting with both of you. I'm going to sign off and go get some dinner. I'm starving.
Okay.
Wow, it's late. Yep, me too. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Becky. Look forward to doing this again. And I'm going to drive down to Pleasant Hill on the weekend for the Pathways conference they're having down there. You're going to be there as well, Dennis?
I plan to be there, yes.
Oh, good. Look forward to meeting you.
Okay. Good night
Okay,
now.
I'll